The first step is the most important step. Until you take the first step to your desired outcome, you're not going to get anywhere.
My name's Mike Lacey, and I am super grateful to have Mr. Charlie Peterson. Now, today's our quarterback day, Charlie, because, again, you're another one of those entitled guys that gets that QB title by your name.
Entitled. That goes against everything I've ever known and stand for.
Trust me, I'm trying to be funny.
That's funny.
And I hope people take that as funny because the circumstances under which you and I have met, I totally have a great respect for you in the many varied pursuits that you're involved in. So
there's a lot.
Thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks for the opportunity. I enjoy it.
And I don't consider you one of those guys that's entitled. I was trying to pull your leg a little bit. Probably not fair. Charlie, you were a quarterback near the end of LaVell Edwards' tenure.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Was Norm Chow the offensive coordinator?
Yeah, so I was actually a redshirt freshman in '95. So I was roommates during football camp with Steve Sarkisian. So as a true freshman, that's when they had Chad Lewis.
Were you rooting for Texas?
Of course,
yeah,
absolutely. I wanted Sark to win and perform well. But then I went on a 2-year mission, and so I came back after they had won the Cotton Bowl. But a lot of those teammates that they still remember you because they've worked out with you and all those things. And so coming back, I started in 98. I was, 7th string, 12th string, whatever it was. I was a nobody, but Norm Chow gave me some opportunities and I started to play. My first real live game action, I think I was a sophomore against Utah State. Kevin Federick got hurt for a play and I came and had a rush because I couldn't throw it. It was so cold. I got smacked for probably like a 7 or 8 yard gain. We ended up punting, went to halftime, and then Kevin Federick came back in. And then I didn't play again that season until the Motor City Bowl. And then my junior year.
I remember that in Detroit.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And you played Marshall?
We did. We played Marshall, and that was a ton of it was a great experience for me because I was so young at the time. And then Norm Chow ended up leaving, which I don't know how much that helped or hurt, but it's always hard when
Those
you're
were
going
tough
through
conditions for him.
Tough for everybody.
For the whole team, for the whole staff, I'm sure.
Yeah, I miss Norm. I thought Norm was amazing, and I'm sure Kalani speaks highly of him as well.
I'm sure he does. Norm was my tight end coach.
Oh, there you go.
So he was there a long time.
Yeah, he used to call me Chaz. Hey, Chaz, get on.
Chaz.
Chaz. He's the only one, so it's kind of fun.
That's such good experiences. You brought up something that I'm going to, break this conversation up just a tiny bit, but where'd you go on your mission?
Fiji, Iko Sakira Vosavaka Vidi.
Easy for you to say.
Fiji.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
And the language they speak there?
Fijian.
So you were just kind of sharing that language with us.
Vakalala, yes.
Wow.
Just a little bit.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
Now in Fiji, they play rugby and Australian rules football.
Lots of rugby.
And they're big boys.
Oh, yeah. Jack DeMooney's from Fiji.
I didn't know that.
Now you know.
We had Raider here yesterday morning.
Yeah, Kahuku.
What? Yeah, and Jack was Kahuku.
Yeah. Raider played at Timpview. Is that right?
Raider played at Timpview.
Okay.
They moved here.
Great family.
And I want to meet Jack.
Yeah, he's a chief back in his homeland, so.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
But he was Fijian.
Yeah.
Because you don't hear that many, Samoans and Tongans. Yeah. A lot of those guys get to football.
Yeah.
Fiji, that's a little bit of not a stretch.
They're
when they play rugby.
Yeah, less than 1 million people speak it. And Fiji's notorious or famous for Fiji sevens. If you've ever watched them play rugby with sevens, and it is fast, and they are really good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And, they're not playing with any equipment.
Oh, no.
And they're big kids who can run,
That's it.
And believe it or not, I don't know. Have you heard of Keanu Tanuasa?
The one that
kid who came
transferred from Utah?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
He met with us this morning.
Oh, cool.
So early this morning. And he's a big kid.
Oh, I bet. I'm excited to watch him play.
And what a happy personality.
Yeah.
It's just anyway, Charlie, you have that similar happy personality. You're involved in a million things. Now you're an administrator at what's the high school in Riverton?
I am a Taylorsville Warrior currently.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
I don't. I just broke the cardinal sin.
It's a great
right?
school.
Taylorsville Warriors.
Yeah, it's an amazing school. A lot of transition at that school over the past 20 years, but I love being there.
Good for you.
Yeah.
My mother was a vice principal over girls or women's discipline. And even back in this was in California, a large school and a very diverse school, Rancho Cordova, California. And I just remember when she was first named to that position, she would bring those issues that she was dealing with home, and you could tell they were gnawing at her.
It's hard.
It is hard. I mean, at that high school level, you're seeing things that are hard. But you're making an impact for good. Or you can.
I had a school resource officer once tell me, and this was a while ago, and she said, "Hey, Charlie, just imagine putting your hand into a 50-gallon drum of water and shaking that water." And she said, "You're shaking it up, but as soon as you leave, that water is going right back to where it was." And I thought, well, what are you trying to get to? And her point was
that you're not making a change.
Yeah, you're not making a big difference in some of these kids' lives as you would hope to do, or what. And I get it from that perspective. She's a law enforcement officer, and so
she sees the worst.
Yeah. And it's hard because I just had another student pass away about 2 days ago that I'd worked with, and he drug overdosed, which it's hard because you're dealing with people that have problems that are much bigger than anything school related. School's a safe place, right? I can help a student. I can control this window of 8 hours and I provide a place of refuge, and you're going to meet friends and have friends, and you're going to learn and have fun. But once you
there's a more structured environment,
Once you leave the school property, life smacks you in the face again, and here we go. And that part's hard to deal with as an administrator because you'd like to think you're making a difference. And I'm sure your mom would come home and, smack her head up against the wall because you want to help, but there's only so much you can do. And sometimes if you allow your personal life to conflict with your professional life, it can cause even that much more strain. So
I think for her, after a matter of a year or two, she was able to, recognize and seriously, I look at what you do, and it's funny that you know Vic Tarleton, who we met a while back.
Of course.
And Vic, I have all the admiration in the world.
He's amazing.
Here's a guy who's taking the kids who have already gotten in trouble.
Yeah.
And he's trying to make a good impact, positive impact on their lives.
Just trying to give some intervention and provide some supports. It's really what we're doing.
And he shared with me, and I'm sure you have similar examples of the one who periodically comes back and says, "Thank you, Charlie. No, you helped change my life." Or "Thank you, Vic.
Yeah.
I'm on a different path and I'm grateful for it." Or, I don't know.
You have days, I'm sure everybody does it. They come home from work and, they're pacing around and, God, I didn't do jack at work today. And my life, this is terrible, blah, 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 blah. And my wife told me, she's like, you're making a bigger impact on those kids than you think you are. And we would argue about this. No, they don't, they don't care, blah, blah. Anyway, I got a letter from a student about 2 weeks ago, and somehow she got a hold of it. And so she kind of, has been using it as, "See, I told you. And that's what it's for. It's fun because the monetary working for the government, the money is never going to be what it would be in private enterprise. And when you have siblings that are making a lot of money and you're not, it's like, oh boy.
Well, obviously you've made a choice.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I've seen your talents in other areas. I see, for example, I'm embarrassed, so I'm gonna I'm going to confess right here before everybody that when I met you through LinkedIn, and I think it was through my son who's a builder, follow this LinkedIn person. You know, you were advocating for your wife's construction company.
That's it, yeah.
And every once in a while, it would come through that your wife was female, and yet the picture on your deal was a dude holding a fish.
Sure.
Says, okay, well, I'm not sure who this is, but I really like his content. Your content, it's Empress Homes, but LinkedIn, you're Charlie Peterson, right?
Yeah. I'm myself, and the only reason I even got on LinkedIn is to support my wife.
Yeah, and you do well.
Yeah, she's building a house not far from here. It's pretty amazing. She's does really well for herself, and she's built a great company from the ground up. It's fun to watch. I live vicariously through her with her business.
If she's anything like what you have shown on your LinkedIn site, I'm saying I'm in. That looks good to me.
Well, there you go.
I'll buy or build.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And so I'm really impressed with that. That's cool. But here you are. You've got time that you're scheduling for your school, and then outside of that time, you're helping your wife with her profession that she loves.
Yeah, I actually really enjoy it. And there's nothing more fun for me than going to visit her job sites and seeing all her subcontractors doing the work and some of the intricacies that she's doing with whether it's an incredible wood floor or some kind of arch in the doorway or just the craftsmanship that goes into some of these homes is really cool.
All right, so here's a quarterback.
Yeah.
Are you a good golfer?
Come on, man. Is the sky blue? No, I'm a terrible golfer, but I have fun.
I've had this hypothesis that all quarterbacks are good golfers, so I was just testing that. I guess you're more like we fullbacks and linebackers where we work at it.
Yeah, well, you know, I golfed with Matt Nagy when we played together in Carolina, and from that point on, I realized I'm not much of a golfer at all.
Well, your football career is very, very interesting. First of all, let's talk about when you came home from your mission, because when I came home from my mission, my class, I'll call it, 1975, was Mark Wilson and Larry Miller and Gary Crowton and a bunch of guys who ended up doing really well. But here I come back from a mission. I'm lighter. I'm slower. And, initially, and I'm, after my redshirt year, I'm 3 years behind some of these guys.
Sure.
So I'm a different class almost, and yet we're all still friends. How was it for you coming back, especially as a quarterback? Because, Charlie, I know that in my era, it was not frowned upon, but highly recommended against if you're a quarterback going on a mission.
It was hard because it took a while. I didn't get back until April. So I had missed spring training, and that's a huge no-no. And so the depth chart at that time, it was Kevin Federick, another player named Drew Miller, then there was Brandon Doman, and then there was myself. And so there was a lot of transition that was kind of going on. And so I worked a lot of the scout team, and I remember BYU played at Alabama, and this is when Alabama had Sean Alexander.
I was at that game, brother.
So I came back from my mission, and so I was a freshman, eligibility-wise freshman, and I didn't travel.
Oh, gee.
And it crushed me. I mean, it crushed me, right? And I remember because I'm sitting at home watching them play, and I'm like, why am I not there, right?
It hurts.
Oh, it stunk.
It hurts a lot.
And so that was kind of the thing that kind of spurred me to get a little bit of saltiness and hey, this is your path until you change it. The only person that can change it is you. So you better start working harder, because right now you're not achieving anything as far as football that you wanted to achieve. So you better get moving. And that kind of spurred me. But I didn't do much my freshman year, but the following year in spring, I feel like I performed well, and off we went. Yeah.
Well, and obviously you checked in when Kevin Federick got injured.
Yeah, that was the following year, not as a freshman. That was as a sophomore. So he was a junior the previous year. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so Charlie, this is significant. You called it saltiness. I like that. There's nothing wrong with that at all.
Nah.
Tell us about your saltiness. What were the disciplines that you employed? What were the attitudes that you to overcome this problem of, hey, I know I'm a better football player? Because let me set the stage.
Sure.
When I chose to go on my mission, Coach Edwards was behind me. He was fine, but he did say, Mike, you can go on your mission after you play football here too.
Of course.
He had 2 general authorities that he wanted me to go meet and in Salt Lake that were going to tell me about the benefits of hanging around, because I was next year's starter at weak side linebacker.
Wow.
Supposedly at the time.
Sure.
And he told me, I remember this. I mean, he really was all behind me going if that was my choice. But he said, Mike, our experience is that a lot of our missionaries that go away on a mission, and up to that point, he said only Lance Reynolds had been the only successful guy. Well, I was behind Phil Jensen, who was a linebacker and a return missionary. But he said, really, you could count on less than one hand the guys who have successfully come back because they've been preaching love and peace.
Yeah.
And they come home and get married and they don't want to play football anymore. I said, no. In my heart, I said, Coach, I'm going to prove that wrong.
Let me pay homage to you.
Was that what you did too, that saltiness?
Well, that's what I say. Let me pay homage to you because you were a trailblazer in many ways. Because obviously over time,
Lance Reynolds was.
Well, but over time, I mean, BYU kind of opened the door for missionaries to come back. And it used to be if you're a return missionary, you only go to BYU. Well, now you see teams across the country that have return missionaries.
And they're happy to take them.
Absolutely.
And do you remember when Jim Harbaugh, comes to Orem, Utah, and talks to a missionary about coming to Michigan?
Oh,
remember
awesome.
That was the Andrew Gentry story. So anyway, I interrupted you.
I love it.
But yeah, now other schools are opening up to this, what they call the 3-year redshirt.
You know,
program.
you said Jim Harbaugh, and I instantly thought of a quarterback named Todd Mortensen.
I remember.
Who was a backup I played with, and he left BYU, and he went and played for Jim Harbaugh when he took the San Diego job and had a great career in football. And I tip my hat to Todd, and I think there are so many players that have so much skill and talent, but they don't get the opportunity. And that's really what you're fighting for, is just to get the opportunity. I mean, there's been guys that have played at the next level that didn't get a ton of opportunity. So it's really interesting to think, and the growth rates and the maturity rates, that's such a differentiation pattern for everybody. It's just different, you know? So for everybody, for me, you know, at the time, you know, Norm Chow left, Lance Reynolds took over as offensive coordinator. You know, Brett Engemann's big, strong guy, 6'5", 200.
And Larry, Larry, what's his name? Was his uncle?
Oh, Larry.
Or stepfather.
CNN guy. I can't remember.
God, how can we forget
Larry
that?
King. Larry King. I never watched it, but hey.
No, neither did I. But
you know, and Brett was a solid athletic player.
He was.
Right. And so I remember going into our junior year, LaVell called me and we were having kind of the quarterback controversy, who's going to start, who's not going to start. And so Brett,
this is between you and who are the others?
So there at this time there was Brett Engemann and myself, and then Brandon Doman was also in that mix. Got it. But we played Florida State to open the season. That's the national champion team.
I remember that.
And so Brett played the first quarter, Charlie played the second quarter, Brett played the third quarter, Charlie played the fourth quarter. Well, you can imagine what happened. We got smacked, right? So, and then the following week, Brett played against Virginia and had a great game. And so then it was cemented. Well, here, you know, this is the guy. And so he started the next.
Who was that against?
Virginia. Okay. At Virginia. He started the next 3 or 4 games, and then he wasn't performing as well. Got a little bit banged up, so they put me in. So I started the next 4 or 5 games, and then I got banged up. And then Brandon came in and had the great game against the University of Utah. I think that was only his first or second start. And next thing you know, new head coach comes in and we start the whole process all over again.
That's right.
Yeah. Tons of fun though. You learned so much.
You were there during Gary Crowton.
My senior year was Gary's rookie year.
First year.
And I love Gary to this day.
No, and obviously you would. I mean,
yeah.
But he brought in an entirely unique system
#1 in the nation.
Well,
7,000 yards of total offense.
You're
broke
right.
all sorts of records, and his playbook was very dynamic, and it was so fun.
Louisiana Tech or at LSU?
So he went from, I believe that he was with the Chicago Bears as the offensive coordinator
true.
before he
I
came to
remember that.
BYU.
I remember that.
And I mean, and he went on, Oregon offensive coordinator. He's super talented. I call him, sorry, Gary, I call him the absent-minded professor because he's got so many ideas, right? But he was really, really good and so much fun to play for. Even as a backup, just fun to play for. Yeah.
No, I was a fullback tight end my last 2 years, and Doug Scoville was our offensive coordinator. And he called me Big Boy.
Big Mike.
I was Big Boy, and I could knock over a linebacker, and every once in a while I could catch a pass, and what a fun offense we had.
I love it.
You said something, that Florida State game.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that game.
Yeah.
And actually, back then, they let us, as ex-players, be down on the field.
Yep.
You had a little hanger thing on your belt. And so I was down on the field, and there was a play or one of our quarterbacks, I don't remember who it was. It may have been you.
Yeah.
Threw a beautiful pass. I think it was to the tight end in the middle.
Yeah.
And this tight end was totally blown out before the ball got there. And Florida State made a pick. They intercepted it. No call.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
I don't remember much of that game because I got rocked a few times. But I remember my first series and first drive, and I remember we were getting close to the end of half, and I remember we were down like 10 or 13 points or something, and there's like 12 seconds left, right before half, right? And LaVell wanted to punt it, and I'm like, why? Let's just launch one. We're already losing, you know?
Yeah.
And I think I ended up, that was the only interception I threw that game, but I threw one right before halftime. So
just a long pass,
yeah,
which is
just
effectively
launched
a punt.
it. Yeah. And I mean, there's so much that goes on in your mind in those games and everything. Once you know how it is, when the whistle blows, there's no time for thinking because the play's over in 4 seconds.
Well, did Norm, I'm pretty sure that Norm Chow, Coach Chow, who became one of the top offensive minds.
Of course.
You know, and he went through these iterations of learning curve from other guys like Doug Scoville, like Ted Tollner, like, why am I forgetting? Andy Reid's mentor, head coach for the Packers.
Brian Billick.
Well, Brian Billick was one of those guys, but the Mike Holmgren.
Oh, duh. How could I forget
Mike Holmgren.
Yeah.
I mean, so those iterations. And all the while, I'm playing tight end and fullback, but Norm's my position coach.
I love it.
And And so he's, in this hotbed of learning. And, in my mind, as I left and watched the team keep growing and Norm took over play calling, I thought, there's a learning curve here.
Of course.
For example, we had a lot of delay of games, and it was funny. Maybe I shouldn't say this because Norm Chow, I believe was and maybe still is if he were still calling plays, one of the top guys in the world. But Tom Homo told me, hey Mike, Norm's up there flipping pages. Now, because he was, okay, what do we run next?
Sure.
And I can't imagine being an offensive coordinator with, I think our offense back then was complex and yet simple.
Yeah.
So
nothing's changed as far as the complexity. I mean, the best coaches are the ones that can take a complex idea and make it very simple.
And make it simple.
Because then the players can execute without thinking, right?
So when we were talking with Jim, and you're executing, you're reading your progression.
Sure.
And a lot of times I was just in awe of Jim McMahon. I felt like, man, the dude has eyes in the back of his head.
Yeah.
Because he looks at progressions and he's starting to throw to this guy over here in the left flat before he even sees him,
Yeah, the best quarterbacks are the ones that are anticipatory. That was my problem. You're supposed to read high to low. And I always just wanted to throw it deep.
That is why Gary Crowton loved you.
Maybe so.
Well, Charlie, What an interesting thing. But there were for a little while, there were some quarterback controversies.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Personally, as part of the team, give me some context as far as the question.
Good. I'm glad you asked that because, how did you take it personally? But then how did it affect our team? For example, let me give you an example. My freshman year, I arrived to the Smithfield house after we left in the early morning to play a JV game against Snow.
Mm-hmm.
And when we got back around noon or 1 o'clock, no, it was probably 2 in the afternoon, early in the season, on the board, there were 4 of our names on there. These guys are suiting out tonight for the New Mexico game. And it was a 7 o'clock start.
Yeah.
My name was on it.
Awesome.
Jubilation. It was jubilation. Yeah. All right.
Sure.
I open up my locker and there's my jersey.
Yeah.
With my number and my name on it.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what my number was. So, there's this little element of joy that you feel. I'm going to get to go out on the field. But there was Gifford Nielsen was lockering right next to me, and he was 3rd string at that time.
Wow.
And Mark Giles.
Yeah.
And then Jeff Duva over the first 3-4 games or so. Some happened, whether they were injured or weren't performing. Gifford got his chance.
Yeah.
And the rest is history.
The rest is history.
So
beautiful, isn't it?
Was
not
beautiful.
Awesome? Yeah.
But to get there, it's almost like, this is maybe unfair, but a woman giving birth. Childbirth is a tough deal. You know what I mean? That's
I don't know how many women are going to like that one. But
that's fortunately, we have no women followers. No,
funny.
Please, I hope we do. But you know what I mean? The effort and the energy and the pain and suffering that you go through for something that's important for your team. I'm talking to you, so I'm sorry. But how did that work for our team? How did that work for you?
For me personally, it was hard, right? Hey, you got a chance to play in the opening game. The team didn't perform well. You didn't do great. Sorry, you're 2nd string, right? So then the guy that you feel like, and don't get me wrong, all of us had different skill sets, right? And so the coach's job is to put the best players in the best position to help us win games. And so over time, I look back, probably the more difficult year than my junior year was my senior year, because I'd been competing with Brandon since we were freshmen, right? And now you're seeing the Dominator and all these things coming out, and you're like, and now looking back on it, all I do is tip my cap to Brandon because
he pitched it to Luke Staley. What are you talking about?
But here's what he did do. Brandon grabbed his lunch pail and he went to work. And how do you not respect that? Right? That's what's beautiful and that's why I love football so much, is normally it's a meritocracy, meaning the best players are going to play. Now, the problem with football now, especially in college football, and you see it in the transfer portal, you have very talented players that are either looking for opportunity elsewhere. My thought is the grass is not always greener. Right? Like I'm shocked to see some of these top tier quarterbacks that have worked so hard to be starters at their university and then they want to go play somewhere else. I'm like, no.
The guy from Georgia.
Yeah, Carson Beck.
Injured.
Well, he's got a girlfriend down in Miami, so I'm sure that makes a difference.
Well, you got NIL money. You can afford to fly there from Atlanta, right? Or from Athens.
I still to this day don't understand the NIL money.
Me neither.
I mean, I remember picking up my game check, or excuse me, my monthly check stipend, and it was your, $600, $700, whatever it was. Hey, go pay your rent.
You were making a lot more than us.
I know. And now, they're treated, and you know what? They should be though, because people don't realize it's another full-time job on top of your schooling. They're spending 40, 60, 80 hours a week in football. So I tip my cap to them. I say, you know what? You guys are grinding. I hope you get everything you got coming to you. And good luck, because in 10 years, that window of opportunity,
it closes.
It's gone. It's gone.
I'm glad you said that, Charlie, because indeed the NIL, the portal, it's changed the entire complexion.
Oh, no question.
Of what we as fans are used to. And yet you're right. They deserve this. They have a unique talent that has value.
Of course.
Right?
Absolutely.
And that value is reflected in this NIL deal.
Mm-hmm.
And but I tell you what, I had some jealousy the last couple of mornings because this is funny. I mean, I remember, and I told one of these guys this morning, I said, I forget what my check was. It was either $125 or $200. I'm a married, return missionary.
Sure.
And yeah, you can work in the summer, but you can't have a job during the season. Right. And you got to attend all your classes, and you're doing this full-time job as a football player. I loved it.
Yeah.
Trust me.
Of course.
I didn't regret playing football. But when someone ran into our car, which was my grandmother's hand-me-down car, a Grand Prix, no less. And when someone ran into our car and put a big dent in it, and then the insurance company paid $800, it didn't go into fixing the fender.
Yeah.
It was next month's meal check, right? Diana,
That's
we
awesome.
got some money.
Yeah. Boy, things have really changed.
But what I wanted to say,
changed.
you're right, because this morning, yesterday morning, I saw cars drive up to the house here that weren't their grandmother's hand-me-down, right?
I'm sure.
And yet I'm really, really, really impressed, because I tested these guys on this. And what's your real intent? What's your effort going into now that you're making a mint? And I said, you're not really making a mint.
Yeah.
To make it in this world, you got to put some away. But now that it feels like you're making a mint, why go to class? Why do the work in the off season?
Right.
And these guys are mature.
Sure.
At least they know how to answer that question.
Well, Kalani's not going to recruit. If you're going to BYU as a Division I football player on a full ride scholarship, you've got some skill. You've got some internal fortitude. You've got that saltiness. You're going to compete. You want to get after it. You've got all those things, because you can't even get an offer. I mean, you're not even going to get a scholarship offer. And the other thing I wanted to say about the transfer portal, though, it's scary. I think it's 3 out of 4 or 2 out of 4. It's a high rate that don't get picked up. My little brother, who was the head coach at Utah Tech, he called it the graveyard, because the kids would think the grass is greener on the other side, and maybe there's a sense of entitlement, and it's not. You lead from where you are. If you're at Taylorsville High School, you lead from Taylorsville High School. If you're at Timpview High School, you lead from Timpview High School. And if you have that mindset, I feel like the world is yours, right? It all comes back to who you are internally and as a man. That's really what it is.
And that's what these young men shared with me, in very wise, even profound. I was impressed. And you said it, you hit it on the nail, on the head. Kalani's culture.
Absolutely. Oh, I played with Kalani. So I was Kalani's starting quarterback.
Well, let's start over.
Yeah. Listen, Kalani is fire. And when I say that in a good way, he is so smart and so capable. And I'm so happy to see his success at BYU. It's been a joy. And A-Rod was a teammate of mine. So, yeah, I mean, the BYU circle is Justin Enna was a teammate of mine, the linebackers coach. I mean, that's one thing I do.
What a linebacker group this year, huh?
Man, they're phenomenal.
Unbelievable.
They're going to get better.
Yeah.
And I don't know, there was a huge article that just came out on, I think it was on CBS Sports, talking about the trajectory of BYU since they joined the Big 12. And I'm like, yeah, BYU is going to be a perennial top 20. All
right, come on now,
no
brother.
question.
Come on, brother.
I'm telling you, it's there. You've gone to other places around the country. You've seen what's more unique than Provo, Utah? Nothing.
And you know what's interesting, Charlie, is what used to be sold as our detriment, as well, you got to overcome all this and that, and BYU's a church school and blah, blah, blah. I don't know, with the basketball program and with the football program, it's being perceived now as a great, benefit.
Go to an Iowa basketball game, men's basketball game. There's 6,000 fans in the stands at an Iowa basketball game. Go to a basketball game in the Marriott Center on a Tuesday. You're 18 strong. And if it's Saturday night, you're 22 strong.
How about that rock? That student section?
That's what I'm saying. Where do you want to go play college basketball? Do you want to go play in front of 6,000 fans, or you want to go play in front of 20,000.
And there's a form of rabidity among those fans. You know,
absolutely.
they're excited. They're happy
Provo,
to be there.
Provo is a college town. It has a unique culture that's different than anywhere in the world.
It does.
Period.
And I think Kalani has embraced that and taken it to the next level. And I, as an ex-player, I saw the good that LaVell Edwards in his simple and yet profound way, he was able to tie us in with the rest of the world in an unassuming, gentle, good-natured, humorful.
Yeah.
But still, you know, now Kalani is he's all in on that culture. And all right, I've said this a couple of times recently, but at first, having been an old linebacker and fullback, when I saw our BYU team up dancing during that third and fourth quarter interlude where the music, you know, they call it turbulence.
Sure.
And it's so exciting. The Tongans are flipping their fire. And our team, they're not down there looking at a chalkboard or anything or an iPad.
Yeah.
They're dancing with the crowd. And some oldsters, the Woody Hayes of the world, ex-coach or old coach for the Ohio State Buckeyes, he wouldn't put up with that, right?
Those days are over.
They are.
I mean, and I think Nick Saban was the last icon of kind of those days. Kids want to have fun. They want to be in the moment. They want to enjoy it. The experience isn't going to come back. What is it? 1% of college athletes go on to play at the next level.
NFL.
So you better fully embrace the experience and you better absorb every last bit of it because it's not, once it's gone, it's gone. It's not coming back.
Jamal Williams is a good example. I've seen him in some little short videos dancing to some cool music.
Yeah.
And a guy that
he had a great career. Yeah, absolutely.
And a great career.
Yeah.
So it's, you can do both things. You can be a super strong football player and play hard between the whistles. And then you can be a friendly, loving,
absolutely
good person.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, no question.
All right, Charlie, Empress Homes.
Yeah.
Taylorsville High School.
Mm-hmm.
What else is occupying your efforts and mind in these days?
Just my kids now.
How many children?
Yeah, I have 4.
Okay.
So I have 3 daughters and a son.
How old are they?
11, 9, 7, and 5.
And are they busy in sports and activities?
My daughter wants to be a Cougarette. And so she's spending...
Building her hair, right?
No. She's on the dance floor. At 11 years old, she's spending 20, 30 hours a week. I was like, what is happening over here?
Wow.
So, yeah, my daughters are all into dance. My wife, whom I met up in Canada when I played in the CFL, she is a dance mom, and she's all about that life outside of her company. And so that's what we do. And my son, he plays lacrosse, he plays basketball, and I'm going to get him here into football soon. But he's a little too young for the pads. I just wasn't in any hurries to get him there.
In California, we didn't start back then until 9th grade.
Yeah.
I didn't strap any pads on until 9th grade.
I didn't play high school football till my 9th grade year.
Yeah.
So
where are you from?
I played at Bingham High School.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good tradition.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Bingham's amazing.
Yeah. All right. You've said a couple of things here that was interesting. First of all, let's go to Brandon Doman, because Brandon Doman and Luke Staley,
mm-hmm. Yeah,
they ran that pitch,
sure,
almost to perfection.
Well, I don't want to say this in the wrong terms, but coaching is imperative. Luke Staley, the year that I started, averaged 3.2 yards per carry. The following year, when Luke Staley won the Doak Walker Award, he averaged over 7 yards per carry.
See how good Brandon Doman was pitching the ball?
That's exactly what it was, too. Well, Brandon was a dual threat, and Brandon could run the ball. I think Brandon might have rushed they were good.
He did, but by the end of the season, he was dinged up a little bit.
Yeah.
I think it affected some of his throws.
Yeah. Well, I got to play a little more, so I wasn't mad about it.
But seriously, that did open Luke Staley up, because Brandon was good at picking up or taking back the fake handoff.
Yep.
Then running up.
When Gary Crowton came in, I'll never forget the very first interaction that any of the team had upon introduction. he had an assistant coach named Mike Borich, and they walked into that meeting, and it was, sit down, put both feet on the floor, look straight up, chins up at a 90-degree angle. I want all eyes on here. And I mean, you talk about hearing a pin drop.
You thought you were in the military.
I'm like, oh man, LaVell, come back and right. But that was it's easier to come in really strong and passionate and hard, and then you can versus laissez-faire, and then you've lost him from the beginning. So anyway, it was a fun dynamic. I look back on my BYU experience and I just have nothing but gratitude. Not only for the experiences that I got to go through and grow through, but it shaped a lot of who I am even now. I haven't played for 25 years. It's been a long time,
right,
you know?
Right.
So yeah, I'm sure you still have the same feeling as well. I went back for BYU alumni days, and you get to meet some of the younger generation players, but the camaraderie of, hey, we have a common bond. We both went through very different. Okay, you said it.
We went through some hell
the
to
physical,
get there, all of us. The
physical and mental fortitude that you have to play college football is top 1% of 1%, period. There's nothing else like it that's going to test you and challenge you physically, mentally, spiritually, the whole thing, especially if you're playing quarterback. But
well, I'm going to say it's a different level. Quarterback, yes. I mean, there you even have more emotional, intellectual anxiety.
Sure.
But I look at the football field and whatever position you're playing, this down, you might knock me down. I'm down on my face. I've got mud. I'm hurt. But there's next down.
Yep.
You know, and if you lose that game, there's next game.
Yep.
And if you don't make it into the playoffs this year, there's a goal for next year, right?
Yeah.
And so, and yes, you can get injured in a lot of different ways.
People do. Football mirrors life in so many ways, Mike. It really does. It just mirrors life, period.
You're right.
So
how do you feel about that? I mean, at a very young age, you went through things as a football player that a lot of people don't go through until they get fired in their first job or whatever, you know?
You know, my problem was I loved football too much. So I actually, after I left BYU, I went and played in what was called the Arena Football 2 League. So I played indoors.
And that's where I wanted to go because you said you played in the Canadian Football League too.
So I actually played 2 years in what was called the AF2, broke some records with a former teammate of mine. And then I went and I left Arena Football. At that time, Arena Football had a players, what do they call it? The NFL Players Association. They had a Players Association. It was fairly good money.
Yeah.
But I left Arena and I went and played for what's called the Carolina Cobras. And that's why I say Matt Nagy, who's the offensive coordinator for Andy Reid, he and I were roommates. So I was close with Matt. Wow. And, you know, he went his way. I actually got my first teaching job at Brighton High School.
Wow.
And my principal, I said, hey, man, I got a chance after the season because Arena League went from January to May. So I coached high school football from August to December. Then I went and played arena football and then came back because the money wasn't great, but it was just so much fun. But after 2 years, I got a call from the CFL and they said, hey, why don't you come up and have a tryout up? And this was up in Toronto at the Rogers Center, the indoor where the Blue Jays play. And I had a private workout. And the ball didn't hit the ground. I mean, it was awesome.
You were awesome.
It was awesome. So anyway, I'm ready to get on the plane home and they don't let me leave. They say, hey, we don't want you to go until you've signed a contract. I said, what? So now I'm like, well, I don't know what they make in the CFL. It was like $80,000, right? No big deal. Nothing compared to what they're making in the NFL.
Early 2000s.
This was in 2004, 2005. Okay. Yeah. Right. And I'm like, I got a good job back at Brighton. I could go, teach school or whatever. And so I quit my teaching job. I went and moved to Canada. And at the time I was single, so who knows where things are taking you, right? And I remember playing catch before a game with Roy Halladay. I don't know if you know who that is. He's a former Cy Young Award winner.
I was going to say he's a baseball.
Yeah, he passed away. He was warming up before a game, and I thought, I'm going to go play catch with him because I'm playing football, and he's out there on the pitcher's mound on the side. And I'll never forget I was scared to catch his ball. I mean, not balls.
So you have a glove.
No,
you're playing with
we did both. We did both because he's like, well, you play football. Let me play football with you. I'm like, okay. So we're just messing around. That's one of my favorite memories of Toronto. That and Ricky Williams coming up there. Holy cow. Anyway, I met my wife up there in Toronto.
Is she from Canada?
She is. She's just from outside of Toronto. So we hit it off.
Toronto's a beautiful city.
Yeah, that's why I say football has done me right because I never would have met my wife without football. It wouldn't have happened. What are the chances of some Mormon guy meeting a gal in Toronto, Canada, 3,000 miles away from his home? Like, it just doesn't happen. That's why I go back to, there's no coincidence. Things happen for a reason. Things happen for a reason.
Good analogies. Man, Eli, we're getting some heavy wisdom today. I'm loving it.
Yeah, right.
Charlie, we could go on for a long time. I can tell. You've got stories. And in fact, if you want to share another story or two before you kind of, but I'd love to hear what, our audience, what we try to do is have, and you've already given a bunch, but the uplifting, whether you overcame some adversity, you saw someone, a team, you've already shared a lot of that, but what are your final feelings on, what makes Charlie Peterson, what makes a great team, what happens in life going forward? You gave me some wonderful wisdom about focusing in a business-oriented sense, and I appreciated that.
Yeah.
So help our audience understand some of these things that share some of that deep wisdom with us.
Well, it's just gospel principles in action, right? But we all have, everything starts with your thought process. How you think leads to your habits, it leads to your actions, it leads to your character. And so there's a famous quote that I don't know if it was Abraham Lincoln or Peter Drucker, whoever it's sent to, but it is the best way to predict the future is to create it. You think about that. The best way to predict the future is to create it. And you have to take that into your own life. I create my outcomes, right? I create the job opportunities I take. I create what kind of parent I'm going to be to my kids. I create how I'm going to live, what I'm going to abide by. I create if I'm going to go golfing next week, right? Like, you create your outcomes. And if I have a mindset of radical responsibility and I'm responsible for the actions that happen to me and my family, I feel like I can't lose. And as a high school administrator and as a father, I get, well, I didn't do it. He did it or she did it. Or, okay, great. But what is your responsibility? What did you do? And again, the blame gets deflected. Well, he pulled my hair or she put her finger in my food, whatever it is. Okay, well, what led to that? And as soon as I do this with my kids all the time. What are you responsible for? Who is responsible for you? And I feel like those two words, radical responsibility, I just feel like that is the ticket. That's the ticket to a well-lived, wonderful life.
I have a trick question for you. You said that the best way to predict the future is to create it yourself, right?
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
There's a principle there. There's a deep, true principle there.
Where there is no vision, the people perish.
That's indeed true. But then there's also another principle. And so this is the trick question. Because my wife was teaching a lesson, and a lot of times we're given promises. Mike, if you do this, this is going to happen.
Sure.
There's a law irrevocably decreed, and something good is going to happen. But there's another scripture that says, but if not. So how do you, as a dad, as a coach, as a administrator to school working with at-risk people, how do you, but if not, hey, Coach, Mr. Peterson, I just screwed up again, and now they might throw me in jail. And you told me that, I was going to create my own future. What do you tell me to still let me have some hope?
The first step is the most important step. until you take the first step to your desired outcome, you're not going to get anywhere. I think it was President Hinckley said something about you can talk about working in the field, but nothing's going to grow until you actually go work in the field.
That's right.
And so you have to have the mindset of, I'm going to take the first step. It's the same thing we do with our body weight. I'm going to lose 10 pounds. Well, great. How are you going to lose 10 pounds? Well, your first step, I'm going to eat better today. And then I'm going to stack that win. And over time, I'm going to come out looking pretty good, right? And it's the same thing in any facet of our life. What we want to build, take the first step. I'm amazed. Look how far your podcast has come. I don't even know how long you've been doing it, but you just got done telling me that you interviewed, 8 amazing guests in the past month. So, I mean, there you go, stacking those W's.
Well, you're one of our W's, brother.
That's funny.
And it's all relative.
Sure.
I mean, Joe Rogan, we are not. But Charlie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mike Lacey Rogan.
You're going to have to sell more people on that.
Nah, your podcast will sell itself.
You're kind. But there's one of my favorite things that I ever did in my life was I had a man who was struggling, and I was his bishop. And this was in, I don't know why I tear up, but he's still one of my best friends.
That's awesome.
But he had an alcohol problem.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe he still does.
Yeah. Everybody has problems behind closed doors, Mike.
Yeah.
Everybody does. And we're all going through something.
The beautiful thing that somehow the church guided him and me into doing, and I went with him because he wanted me to go, and it ended up being just as good for me as for anyone else.
Yeah.
Is we went to the 12-step. You talk about steps.
You did the AA course.
We did the 12-step course.
Good for you.
And I tell you, that's for everybody.
Sure.
And I'm not going to say his name he knows who he is if he ever listens here, but I love that man.
Yeah.
He's a great man. I know God loves him.
Absolutely.
And he taught me some things. So anyway, one of the steps in 12 steps, as I recall, is if you make a misstep, if something bad happens, like you said, that next step.
Yeah.
And so I fall down, I lose to Kansas.
Yeah.
I have a frustration against Arizona State. Man, that next step was dang good.
Sure.
As a fan.
Yeah.
Charlie, anything else? I apologize.
No, you're so good. Repentance is it's a beautiful principle for a reason. That's awesome. No,
it is. And repentance is change. That's all it is. I mean, for people who aren't aware of,
that's all it is,
of a gospel principle, it's, we want to change. We want to get better. So you talk about diet.
Yeah.
For me, I've been fortunate that I've lost some weight in the last 5-6 months. But not every week.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, but you got to take the first steps first, right?
That's
and the fact of the matter is that you identified it, you created a plan in your mind, and now you're making action towards it. It's the same thing in all aspects.
I want you as a coach, Charlie.
Just listen. I love what I do. I work with amazing people. Taylorsville High School, as a government institution, working with public school teachers, I just tip my cap because
I do too.
There are so many things. There has to be structure somewhere, and that's a great place to start. And we have such devoted, kind-hearted, and people. We have a bright future too. The youth of now. I mean, look what the things they have to go through compared to what we went through. I mean, this thing alone is enough to drive somebody insane if you don't have the proper parameters on it.
The young men I've met this week, I realize, man, these guys have wisdom beyond what they thought of back then. So, and maybe it's because they've had to overcome some of these challenges. But it's people like you and Vic Tarleton, no, really, that are making incremental, step-by-step changes and helps being mentors to the one. Thank you for what you do, Charlie Peterson.
Listen, Vic, you heard it here. If Mike's putting me up there with you, I will take it.
We haven't talked enough football, but Charlie, I appreciate you being on Beyond the Game with us today. Thank you.
Tons of fun. I appreciate it.
Let's do it again.
Okay, you got it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for watching another episode of Beyond the Game. Remember to click here to subscribe and click here to watch our recent videos. Also, please follow us on social media And remember, go Cougs.